Alexis Bailey Vineyard calls Hastings its home, and with its award-winning wines, we're bound to have some delicious pairings and even tastier treats. So let's head back to the kitchen and see what we've got in store this month. To get our meal started with our country red wine from Alexis Bailey Vineyard, we're going to start by making a tomato balsamic bruschetta or bruschetta, depending on how fancy pants you want to be with it. So let's start with making our toppings so that they can come together and get a nice flavor. So what I've got on my cutting board is some basil, and I'm going to stack up my leaves. And then what I'm going to do to help with slicing them is I'm going to roll them up. And now I'm going to come in with my knife and I'm going to get these little ribbons. And this is going to be the start of my toppings. So I'm going to break apart my ribbons. And I want to keep going until I have about 1/3 of a cup of this. And that means that if I get one cluster of basil, I should be pretty well good to go. So I'm going to loosen that up and you'll start to get that really delicious aromatic smell. I'm going to get my tomatoes ready. I've got a variety here. I bought an assortment at the grocery store. You can see I've got some red, I have some yellow, and then I've also got some of these almost purpley green colors. So it's going to give me a nice variety of flavors in there. So I'm just going to work on dicing these up nicely, and I want to get it so that I have about 2 cups of tomatoes. And they'll probably blurp a little bit here or there, that's all right. You just slice them down and keep adding them, breaking them apart, combining this with that wine from Alexis Bailey, the flavors that you have inside of that red wine. It's one of those medium body wines. Their website's really helpful. It'll show you some of the flavors that you have inside of that wine. The country red that we're working with today has kind of hints of cherries, and then there's also some spices in there, and so that's going to work really nicely with this tomato combination. So I've got about 1.5 cups of tomatoes here, and it's added to my 1/3 of a cup of basil. So now what I'm going to do is I've shredded about 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. Now I'm going to add just a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt. And then I have a teaspoon of olive oil and a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. Now I'm going to grab a slotted spoon and I'm going to stir to combine this all together. And this is going to make that topping for my toast. While this combines and those flavors start to muddle all together, I'm going to start working on my toast. So what I've got here is I have a grill pan that I've already oiled, and it's sitting at a low temperature right now to get some of that flavor buildup in that cast iron skillet. And I'm going to grab a loaf of French bread. And I'm going to cut off that end part because that doesn't work the best for this. We can save it for a different project. And then I'm going to cut nice, thin slices of this. And I want them to be between 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch, because when I toast them, I want them to get nice and crispy, nice and quick. All right, so that's a good amount to get started with. So now I'm going to bump this up to medium, and I'm going to turn this up. And now what I'm going to do is place my slices of bread into my grill pan. And I can fit about 6 into my pan. It depends on what size of pan you have. So I'm going to cut another 6 discs of bread while these begin to toast. And so I've got them toasting on a dry side right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab just a smidgen of olive oil and just gently add a fine layer of olive oil, because then I'm going to flip them. So we have our bread nice and toasted, so now it's really easy. The final step is just taking a scoop and putting it onto the top of each of our pieces of toast. And that's all it is. And then we've got our appetizer taken care of. We can pour up our first glass of country red wine, and we're ready to start having dinner. So we have our appetizer under control. So now we need to focus in on a delicious main dish to highlight our country red wine from Alexis Bailey Vineyard. And we're gonna do that with roast chicken. So let's start by talking about what we're going to coat our chicken in before we start roasting it in the oven. So what I've got here is an assortment of 3 herbs. I have rosemary, thyme, and parsley. And I have enough here so that when they're all nicely chopped, it ends up being about a tablespoon of each. So we're gonna work our way through and we're gonna chop all these up, mix them together. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna add these to our bowl because now we need some sort of liquid agent to combine them. And we're gonna do that with olive oil. So we have a 1/2 cup of olive oil. And then we also need some acid in here to really get a nice roast on our chicken. And we're gonna do that with lemon. So I'm going to start by breaking up that membrane on the inside, and I'm gonna start by zesting the outside of my lemon. And when I zest, I wanna take off just the color, not the white as well, because then we're gonna get some bitterness in our olive oil mixture. So I'm just working my way around, and we're gonna get that nice lemon scent now from that. And we just need the zest of 1 lemon, and we'll also add the juice of that 1 lemon as well. So we'll pop that in, and now we'll just do a slice in half, and we're going to squeeze. And now that we have those squeezed, you can see all the seeds have popped up to the top. We're going to use this lemon half inside of the chicken, so I want to take and just pop those seeds out so those aren't inside of the chicken. And we're going to set this to the side. We're going to do the same thing with the other half of our lemon. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my chicken. And what I have here is about a 5-pound chicken. And I'm gonna start by taking my lemons, and we're gonna find that little hole in there. And now we're gonna open the flap, squeeze the lemon together, and wedge that inside of our chicken. I've already checked to make sure that we have all of the extra pieces and the giblets taken out of that chicken. And now what I'm gonna do is give it one more quick stir. And I'm gonna grab a little bit and I'm gonna start coating the outside of my chicken just like this. And getting this all nicely coated is going to mean then that it's gonna get a nice brown roasted color in the oven. And now my wings are nicely tucked in, my legs are tucked in underneath. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna transfer this over to my roasting pan. And now it's time to do a super good cleanup because we want to make sure that our work area is nice and healthy. So to do that, I'm going to take a quick moment and I'm going to clean everything up. So we have our area all nice and cleaned up, and now we're gonna get ready for our root vegetables. And to make sure my cutting board doesn't slide around, I have a towel. And also one of our root vegetables is beets, and that can have a lot of juices that can stain your countertop. So what I like to do is lay a protective towel down before I even get started so I don't forget and regret when I start cutting my beets. So we're gonna go with 4, 4, and 8. And that means 8 potatoes, 4 carrots, and 4 beets. So what I have on my board is washed fingerling potatoes, and I'm gonna start just by slicing my 8 potatoes in half. I don't want them any smaller than that. I've got a roasting tray inside of my roasting pan, and if I make them too small, they're gonna fall through. Also, we don't want it to be something where the potatoes and the carrots and the beets are just mush by the time you have a fully cooked chicken. So you can see the potatoes doesn't take super long. I've got them already sliced in half. And now I'm gonna switch over to carrots. So I'm gonna start by peeling my carrots. And then what I'm gonna do is once I have them peeled, I'm simply going to take them and half them down. And so I'll slide all these little ribbons out of the way. We'll get rid of the blurple on the end, and we'll just go and half them just like that. So I'm gonna do that with my 4 carrots now. One thing that is so fantastic about Alexis Bailey Vineyard is not only are they really helpful when you stop into the vineyard, but they also have an info email line on their website. And if you have any questions at all, they do a perfect job of getting right back to you and getting that information into your head. By talking to them, I was able to find out that this country red wine is perfect for having it as an everyday wine, and it goes great with roasted chicken. If you've never worked with beets before, they do a really nice job of staining your hands. So let's see if we can pop through there. Not only will they stain your hands, they'll also stain your countertop. So be mindful. You can already see the color popping in on my knife. So we're just gonna work on peeling these. You can see already it's a beautiful rolling away purple color. All right, so we have our beet nice and peeled. So what I'm gonna do now is, like I said, I'm gonna go in half, and then I'm gonna lay them down because it's safer for cutting them, and I'm gonna go in half again. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dress all of my vegetables. So I'm gonna give my olive oil mixture one more quick stir. I'm gonna pour this over the top. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a pair of tongs, and I'm simply gonna spin these all together so they get nice and covered. And now you'll start to see those beets transfer some of their colors to the other vegetables. That's okie dokie. You know you are ready steady when you've got a nice gloss on all of your vegetables. So now I'm gonna combine together, grab a scoop, and tuck it around my chicken. And some of them are gonna fall through the rack. That's not a big deal. Some will be above and some will be below. But I wanna get them nice and nestled up to my chicken. My last step to get this ready for roasting is to come in with a half of a cup of chicken broth, and I'm just gonna pour this on the edge. I don't wanna pour it over my chicken or my vegetables because I wanna make sure that that nice flavoring stays on there. And then also I'm gonna come in and just take and put some freshly ground black pepper all over the top. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with my salt. And I'm gonna put fresh ground salt all over that. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it into a 425-degree oven for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, I'm gonna rebaste my chicken with all of the juices that have come to the bottom of the pan. And then I'm gonna pop the oven down to 350 degrees. Because this is a 5-pound chicken, this is gonna take anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours. So I'm gonna have to check it with my meat thermometer to make sure that it registers at about 170 when I check it in the thigh. So let's pop it in at 425 for the first 15 minutes. After 2.5 hours, our chicken is done roasting. So now it's time to plate it up. So let's see if we can get our spatula. Ooh, nice. My problem is I always hook the cooking rack under it. So now we've got our chicken plated. So now we can come in and we can get the root vegetables that are still on top of our roasting rack off first. And we'll grab all of our delicious beets and potatoes and carrots, and we'll fill up our tray with all of that deliciousness. And I think we need a dessert to go with this. So far in our meal, we've had wine to drink with both our appetizer and our dinner. So now let's figure out a way to work our wine into our dessert. And we're gonna do that with a chocolate red wine, country red wine, pot de creme. So in my saucepan, I have 2/3 of a cup of heavy cream. And to that, I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of our country red wine. And then I'm gonna start by taking my whisk and combining it all together so that instead of having the ribbons of white cream running through the wine, it's one solid pale pink color. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it on medium-low heat and I'm gonna start warming up that cream slowly. I don't wanna do it quickly, otherwise I run the risk of curdling my cream. So I'm gonna do it nice and slow. I'll know it's ready when I start to get some steam coming off the surface and some small bubbles starting to form. So while that's going on, I'm gonna come over to my large mixing cup. And this is a 4-cup mixing cup. And in there I have 2 egg yolks and I'm gonna bust these all to pieces. And to that I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of sugar. And then I'm also going to add a pinch of salt. And that'll help bring out some of these flavors. And now I'm gonna stir to combine this so that it starts to get almost paste-like. So we have a gentle boil going on now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add 4 ounces of chocolate into our pan. And I'm actually, once I start adding that first piece of chocolate, I'm gonna drop the heat down so we don't run the risk of scorching our chocolate and getting a burnt flavoring in there. And what I wanna do is I wanna grab my whisk again, and I'm just going to work at slowly whisking this together to get rid of all of my lumps and bumps of my chocolate. And we're gonna go from that pale purple color to a smooth chocolate color. So now that I have my chocolate combined, I'm gonna take my pan off of the heat. And now I'm going to start working to combine my chocolate with my egg yolks. But I need to do this very carefully. And it's kind of a weird process through here, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my whisk back into that egg yolk, stir a little bit. Some of that warm temperature on that whisk is gonna start bringing up the temperature of those egg yolks. And then I'm gonna get a ladle and I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of that chocolate. And then I'm gonna stir to bring that together. And I'm gonna do another tiny scoop of chocolate. Remember, this is doing it so we're protecting our egg yolks and we're not then having scrambled eggs in there. And now we're to the point, feeling on the outside of my measuring bowl, that I should be good enough to add in the rest of my chocolate. I'm gonna pour that in. And now I'm gonna stir to ensure that this is all nice and combined. When it looks like I have it all nicely combined together, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a ½ teaspoon of vanilla extract to get some flavoring in there and bring out the chocolate and the wine flavor. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna break this up into 4 different servings. So I have these clear little bowls so it's easy for you to see them at home. But if you wanted to, you don't need to invest money in fancy little clear bowls. Usually when I make this, I just make it in coffee mugs because then you've got the handle. If you're having a party, people can move around, or it's just an easy thing that you already have on hand. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over with that soup ladle and I'm gonna put 2 scoops into each of my clear vessels. I'm gonna put them back inside of a larger baking dish. And now the last step before we move this over to the oven is to get this oven ready. So this is a pretty sensitive dessert, not sensitive in that it's hard to make, but sensitive that we wanna keep our bowls at the right temperature for this. So what I have in here is 4 cups of really hot water, and I'm gonna pour it gently into the baking dish. And by adding those 4 cups of hot water, what happens is my water level inside of my pan is now halfway up these bowls so that it'll keep the temperature correct in those smaller bowls while I'm baking it in the oven. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pop this into a 325-degree oven for 45 minutes. I'll know they're done when the edge is set and the middle's still a little jiggly. So let's get them cooking. So I've got my pot de creme out of the oven, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna top it with just a little bit of whipped cream. Now here's my secret. I get heavy whipping cream from the grocery store, and to that I add about a tablespoon of sugar, a splash of vanilla extract, and because we're working with that fantastic wine from Alexis Bailey Vineyard, I threw in a splash of that. So I actually have red wine whipped cream here now. And so all I did was pop it into a sandwich bag. I'm just gonna make a little dollop right here, and we're ready to enjoy our dinner. We have before us a fantastic dinner, all made focusing around that country red wine from Alexis Bailey Vineyard. We're gonna start with our tomato and balsamic vinegar bruschetta, and then move on to our roasted chicken with roasted root vegetables, and end with a fantastic dessert. That's right, chocolate and red wine pot de creme. So remember, the apron may be optional, but the flavor isn't.
Just scrubbing the beet juice, yeah.